December 7, 1941. Reich's Luftfahrt Ministerium, Berlin. The leather-bound intelligence report trembled slightly in Reich Marshall Hermann Göring's hands as he read the latest assessment of American aircraft production capacity. The numbers seemed absurd, almost comedic in their impossibility. According to German intelligence estimates, the United States military possessed fewer than 3,000 combat aircraft total. Their annual production rate barely exceeded what the Reich's factories could accomplish in a single month. The Luftwaffe's technical assessment concluded that American aviation industry remained fundamentally a cottage operation, suitable perhaps for producing mail planes and civilian transports, but utterly incapable of serious military production. Göring set the report aside with characteristic arrogance. He had visited American factories during the 1930s, witnessed their crude assembly methods, their reliance on untrained workers, their chaotic organizational structures. The idea that such primitives could challenge German precision engineering was laughable. The fatherland's aircraft factories employed master craftsmen whose skills had been refined across generations. Each Messerschmitt and Focke-Wulf represented years of careful development, months of meticulous construction, and centuries of Germanic technical excellence. American production, by contrast, resembled industrial barbarism. What Göring couldn't know, what no German leader could have imagined, was that at that very moment, across the Atlantic, the greatest industrial transformation in human history was already beginning. In boardrooms from Detroit to Seattle, American executives were finalizing contracts that would shatter every assumption the Reich held about production possibilities. The mathematics of Allied victory were being calculated not in tactical manuals, but in production schedules that would render German manufacturing capacity irrelevant through sheer overwhelming abundance. The transformation began on May 26, 1940, when President Franklin Roosevelt delivered a fireside chat that stunned listeners across America and around the world. His calm voice carried an announcement that seemed to defy industrial reality. The United States, he declared, would produce 50,000 military aircraft within the next 12 months. The goal exceeded the total number of planes built in America since the Wright brothers' first flight at Kitty Hawk. Aviation experts, both American and foreign, dismissed the target as political rhetoric divorced from manufacturing reality. German intelligence analysts reviewing Roosevelt's speech concluded it was obvious propaganda designed to intimidate the Reich through impossible boasts. Their calculations were methodical and seemingly accurate. American aircraft production in 1939 had totaled fewer than 6,000 military planes. Even doubling that figure annually would require years to approach Roosevelt's fantastical promises. The Reich's own production capabilities, refined through years of rearmament, could barely achieve such numbers with their established infrastructure and trained workforce. How could the Americans, with their primitive industrial base, accomplish what seasoned German engineers considered impossible? The answer lay in a fundamental misunderstanding of American industrial philosophy. Where German production emphasized craftsmanship and individual excellence, American manufacturers were pioneering approaches that treated aircraft construction as a mass production challenge rather than an artisanal craft. The automotive industry's assembly line methods, perfected over decades of civilian production, were about to be applied to military aviation with results that would astound the world. Henry Ford's announcement in early 1941 that his company would build heavy bombers using automotive techniques provoked skepticism even within American aviation circles. Dutch Kindleberger, president of North American Aviation, captured the industry's doubt with his dismissive comment that Ford couldn't expect a blacksmith to make a watch overnight. Traditional aircraft manufacturers had spent decades developing their expertise through careful apprenticeship programs and gradual capacity expansion. The idea that automotive workers could suddenly begin producing complex military aircraft seemed to violate every principle of aeronautical manufacturing. Ford's vision extended far beyond conventional thinking. His team, led by production genius Charles Sorensen, examined the B-24 Liberator bomber and saw not an impossibly complex flying machine, but a collection of manageable manufacturing challenges. They methodically broke the aircraft into 11 major assemblies, then subdivided those into 69 smaller components. Each section could be manufactured using proven automotive techniques adapted for aviation requirements. The approach horrified traditional aircraft builders who viewed each plane as a unique creation requiring individual attention and craftsmanship. The Willow Run facility that Ford constructed in Michigan represented a complete reimagining of aircraft production. Architect Albert Kahn designed the main structure to encompass 3.5 million square feet of factory space under a single roof, with an assembly line stretching over a mile in length. The scale dwarfed anything previously attempted in aviation manufacturing. Four massive turntables positioned two-thirds along the production line allowed the bombers to make 90-degree turns while maintaining assembly flow. The facility was designed around the radical concept that bombers could roll off production lines like automobiles, one completed aircraft every hour around the clock. German intelligence services monitoring American industrial development initially dismissed Willow Run as another example of American bombast. Their agents reported the facility's construction but concluded it represented wasteful overbuilding that would never achieve its stated production goals. The Reich's aircraft manufacturers operated under careful resource allocation, with each facility sized appropriately for realistic output targets. The Americans appeared to be constructing monuments to their own ignorance of manufacturing limitations. Throughout 1942, as American factories struggled to transition from civilian to military production, German confidence in their assessment seemed justified. Early production figures from American plants fell far short of Roosevelt's ambitious targets. Quality control problems plagued manufacturers attempting to apply mass production techniques to precision aircraft components. Workers trained in automotive assembly struggled with the tighter tolerances required for aviation equipment. German observers noted these difficulties with satisfaction, confirming their belief that American industrial capacity remained fundamentally inferior to German expertise. The first hints of transformation appeared in production statistics that German intelligence initially attributed to American propaganda exaggeration. By late 1942, monthly aircraft production figures from the United States began climbing at rates that seemed mathematically impossible. Factories that had produced dozens of planes monthly were reporting hundreds. The increases couldn't represent real production growth, German analysts concluded, but rather statistical manipulation designed to inflate American capabilities for psychological warfare purposes. The reality was far more threatening to German strategic planning than any propaganda campaign could have been. American manufacturers were achieving breakthrough improvements in production efficiency through systematic application of mass manufacturing principles. Where German factories emphasized quality through individual craftsmanship, American plants pursued quality through standardization and process control. Components manufactured in Detroit could be installed in aircraft assembled in California with perfect fit and function. This interchangeability allowed for production scaling that German systems, dependent on local craftsmanship variations, could never match. By early 1943, the scope of American industrial mobilization was becoming impossible to deny. Facilities like Willow Run were approaching their design production targets, rolling completed B-24 bombers off assembly lines at intervals measured in minutes rather than weeks. The automotive industry's conversion to aircraft production had overcome initial skepticism through demonstrated results that exceeded even optimistic American projections. General Motors divisions were producing aircraft engines by the thousands monthly. Chrysler plants manufactured aircraft components alongside tank production. The entire industrial base was transforming with speed that German planners had considered impossible. The human dimension of American production growth proved equally remarkable. While 16 million Americans served in uniform, 24 million more relocated to support defense production, often earning wages far exceeding their previous employment. Women entered aircraft factories in unprecedented numbers, with facilities like Willow Run employing 12,000 female workers at equal pay with their male counterparts. This workforce expansion represented not just numerical growth, but fundamental transformation in industrial labor practices that multiplied effective production capacity. German leadership struggled to comprehend the magnitude of American industrial mobilization, even as evidence mounted throughout 1943. Hitler's advisors continued to assure him that American production claims represented propaganda rather than reality. The Führer himself remained convinced that American industrial capacity, while impressive, would require years to achieve meaningful military impact. By then, German victory the war's outcome. This in Europe would render American production capabilities irrelevant to fundamental miscalculation would prove to be among the most catastrophic strategic errors in military history. The mathematical reality of American production began revealing itself through statistics that German intelligence could no longer dismiss as propaganda fabrication. In 1943, American factories delivered aircraft at rates that defied every assumption about manufacturing limitations. Single facilities were producing more planes monthly than entire German aircraft industries had managed during their peak peacetime years. The Ford Willow Run plant alone was approaching production levels that exceeded the combined output of multiple Reich aviation manufacturers. The transformation extended far beyond individual facilities to encompass systematic changes in how America approached industrial warfare. Where German production relied on skilled craftsmen working within established guilds and apprenticeship systems, American manufacturers were proving that complex aircraft could be assembled by workers trained in specific tasks over periods measured in weeks rather than years. A housewife from Michigan could learn to install electrical systems in bombers with precision that matched traditional aircraft mechanics who had spent years developing their expertise. German technical observers who managed to gather intelligence on American production methods reported findings that their superiors dismissed as enemy disinformation. American factories were achieving quality control through standardization rather than individual craftsmanship. Components manufactured in separate states arrived at assembly plants with tolerances so precise that installation required no modification or adjustment. This level of standardization enabled production scaling that German systems, dependent on local variations and individual skill, could never replicate. The scope of American industrial conversion became apparent through production figures that seemed to violate physical laws of manufacturing capacity. Automotive companies that had never built aircraft were delivering bombers and fighters by the hundreds monthly. General Motors divisions were producing aircraft engines at rates that exceeded Germany's total aviation power plant output. Chrysler facilities manufactured wing sections and fuselage components while simultaneously producing tanks and artillery pieces. The entire American industrial base was demonstrating flexibility that German planners had never considered possible. By mid-1943, American aircraft production was achieving monthly totals that approached Germany's annual targets. Factories operated continuously through 3 shifts, maintaining production schedules that German manufacturers couldn't sustain even during wartime emergency periods. The Americans were building planes faster than German forces could destroy them, creating a mathematical impossibility for Axis strategic planning. Every month of continued American production tilted the global aircraft balance further toward Allied superiority. The quality of American aircraft production proved as remarkable as its quantity. Despite German expectations that mass production would compromise performance, American planes demonstrated capabilities that matched or exceeded individually crafted German aircraft. The North American P-51 Mustang, designed and produced using mass manufacturing techniques, achieved performance specifications that surpassed hand-built German fighters. American bombers delivered payload capacities and operational ranges that German designers had considered technically impossible. German pilots encountering American aircraft in growing numbers reported capabilities that contradicted Reich intelligence assessments. American planes possessed reliability that German aircraft, despite superior individual craftsmanship, couldn't match. Components functioned consistently across different aircraft, enabling maintenance and repair procedures that German ground crews envied. The standardization that German engineers had dismissed as primitive barbarism was proving superior to traditional craftsmanship approaches in actual combat conditions. The psychological impact on German aviation leadership became apparent through increasingly desperate attempts to rationalize American achievements. Hermann Göring, who had confidently dismissed American production capacity just 2 years earlier, now faced monthly intelligence reports documenting aircraft deliveries that exceeded his wildest nightmares. The Reich's finest aviation engineers were struggling to comprehend how American factories could achieve production rates that German facilities, even operating at maximum capacity with unlimited resources, could never approach. Intelligence estimates of American aircraft strength required constant upward revision throughout 1943 and into 1944. Numbers that had seemed impossibly inflated in previous assessments proved conservative compared to actual American production achievements. German strategic planning, based on assumptions about American industrial limitations, was becoming meaningless in the face of production capabilities that rendered traditional military calculations obsolete. The ripple effects of American aircraft production extended throughout the global conflict. Allied air operations that German commanders had expected to diminish due to attrition losses instead intensified as replacement aircraft arrived faster than combat units could absorb them. American factories were producing surplus aircraft while simultaneously supplying Allied nations through Lend-Lease programs. The mathematical foundation of German strategy, based on inflicting unsustainable losses on Allied aviation, was crumbling beneath production statistics that made replacement faster than destruction. German aircraft manufacturers, despite heroic efforts to increase their own production, found themselves competing against an industrial system that operated according to completely different principles. Reich factories emphasized quality through individual attention and craftsmanship excellence. American plants achieved quality through systematic process control and standardization. The German approach produced superior individual aircraft but could never match American quantity. The American system delivered adequate aircraft in overwhelming numbers that rendered individual superiority irrelevant. By late 1943, German aviation leadership was confronting the reality that American industrial capacity had fundamentally altered the strategic balance of the war. Production statistics that had seemed like propaganda fantasies just months earlier were proving conservative estimates of American capabilities. The Reich faced an enemy whose factories could replace aircraft losses faster than German forces could inflict them, creating a mathematical certainty of defeat that no tactical brilliance could overcome. The transformation of American aircraft production from cottage industry to global manufacturing dominance had occurred with speed that defied German comprehension. Facilities that had barely existed in 1941 were delivering aircraft by the thousands in 1943. Workers who had never seen military planes were assembling bombers and fighters with precision that exceeded traditional craftsman standards. The Industrial Revolution that German leaders had dismissed as impossible propaganda was reshaping the fundamental nature of aerial warfare through sheer overwhelming production capacity that rendered traditional military planning obsolete. The Ford Willow Run plan achieved its impossible promise by April 1944, rolling a completed B-24 Liberator off the assembly line every 63 minutes, 24 hours daily, 7 days weekly. German intelligence officers monitoring these reports through neutral sources initially classified them as disinformation, designed to demoralize Reich leadership. No manufacturing facility in human history had achieved such production rates for complex machinery. The Reich's most efficient aircraft factories required weeks to complete a single bomber, using their finest craftsmen and most advanced techniques. Yet photographic evidence began confirming American claims through reconnaissance flights and neutral diplomatic channels. Aerial photographs of Willow Run showed rows of completed bombers stretching across multiple acres of tarmac space, with additional aircraft visible on assembly lines inside the facility. German photo interpreters counted aircraft in numbers that exceeded their own monthly national production totals at single American factories. The visual evidence was undeniable, but its implications remained incomprehensible to military leaders trained in traditional manufacturing limitations. The scale of American production became apparent through combat encounters that defied German strategic calculations. Luftwaffe pilots reported facing American bomber formations that seemed to replenish themselves overnight despite heavy losses inflicted during daylight raids. Intelligence estimates of American bomber strength required constant upward revision as new aircraft appeared faster than German forces could destroy them. Wings that had been decimated in combat operations returned to full strength within days, equipped with aircraft that showed no signs of hasty construction or compromised quality. German aircraft designers studying captured American planes discovered manufacturing techniques that challenged fundamental assumptions about production methodology. American aircraft components displayed precision machining and quality control that exceeded handcrafted German equivalents, yet bore clear evidence of mass production assembly. Standardization was so complete that parts from aircraft manufactured in different states were perfectly interchangeable. This level of systematic quality control enabled repair and maintenance procedures that German ground crews found superior to their own carefully crafted aircraft. The psychological transformation within German aviation leadership became evident through increasingly frantic attempts to counter American production advantages through technological innovation. Reich researchers pursued advanced aircraft designs, hoping that superior performance could offset numerical disadvantages. Jet aircraft development received desperate priority as German engineers sought breakthrough technologies that might neutralize American mass production superiority. Yet even the most advanced German aircraft required months of careful construction, using scarce materials and skilled craftsmen who could never be replaced at American training speeds. American production statistics by early 1944 revealed industrial capacity that rendered traditional military planning obsolete. Monthly aircraft deliveries exceeded German annual production targets across multiple categories simultaneously. Fighter planes, bombers, transport aircraft, and training planes rolled off American assembly lines in quantities that German factories couldn't approach even if converted entirely to single aircraft types. The diversity of American production was as remarkable as its volume, demonstrating industrial flexibility that German specialized facilities could never match. The human cost of American industrial mobilization impressed German observers who had expected mass production to compromise worker welfare. Intelligence reports from neutral diplomats described American aircraft factories providing wages, working conditions, and safety standards that exceeded civilian employment in many German industries. Workers relocated from across America to support aircraft production, creating boomtowns around manufacturing centers that demonstrated national commitment to industrial warfare. The voluntary nature of American labor mobilization contrasted sharply with Reich forced labor programs that produced inferior results despite coercive methods. Training programs that prepared American workers for aircraft production achieved results that German technical education systems couldn't replicate. Facilities like the Aircraft Apprentice School processed 8,000 students weekly, providing specialized training that enabled complex aircraft assembly within weeks, rather than the years required for traditional apprenticeships. This systematic approach to skill development created workforce capacity that could expand indefinitely as production demands increased, while German skilled labor remained fixed by demographic and educational limitations. The technological sophistication embedded in American mass production became apparent through captured aircraft examination that revealed advanced manufacturing techniques. American factories achieved precision tolerances through systematic process control rather than individual craftsmanship, enabling quality standards that remained consistent across thousands of aircraft. German engineers studying American production methods reported findings that their superiors dismissed as impossible, unable to comprehend manufacturing systems that achieved excellence through standardization rather than artisanal skill. Corporate collaboration within American aircraft production demonstrated industrial coordination that German cartels couldn't match despite centralized planning. Companies that had competed fiercely in civilian markets cooperated seamlessly in military production, sharing designs, manufacturing techniques, and production capacity to maximize national output. Ford built consolidated bombers, General Motors produced engines for multiple aircraft manufacturers, and Chrysler manufactured components for competing aviation companies. This voluntary coordination achieved efficiency that German state-controlled industries struggled to replicate. The strategic implications of American aircraft production became undeniable through combat statistics that showed replacement rates exceeding loss rates across all theaters of operation. German forces faced the mathematical impossibility of inflicting losses faster than American factories could replace them. Every successful German air attack was negated within days by replacement aircraft that arrived equipped with improved systems and enhanced capabilities. The attrition strategy that had worked against previous enemies became counterproductive against an industrial system that treated aircraft as expendable commodities. Quality improvements within American mass production challenged German assumptions about manufacturing trade-offs between quantity and performance. Later production aircraft demonstrated capabilities that exceeded earlier models despite faster assembly times and lower unit costs. American engineers incorporated combat lessons and technological advances into production lines with speed that German development cycles couldn't match. Continuous improvement through systematic feedback created aircraft that combined mass production efficiency with performance evolution that individually crafted German planes couldn't achieve. The global scope of American aircraft supply through Lend-Lease programs multiplied the strategic impact beyond direct American military requirements. Soviet, British, and other Allied air forces received American aircraft in quantities that exceeded many nations' total production capacity. German forces faced American-built aircraft on every front simultaneously, creating strategic impossibilities for resource allocation and tactical planning. The Reich confronted not just American industrial capacity, but American production supporting multiple allies across global theaters of operation. German attempts to match American production through factory expansion and workforce mobilization proved futile against mathematical realities of industrial capacity. Reich aircraft production peaked at levels that represented small fractions of American monthly output despite maximum resource allocation and desperate measures including forced labor and material conservation. Every German production improvement was dwarfed by simultaneous American increases that maintained overwhelming quantitative advantages while achieving qualitative parity or superiority. The inevitability of German defeat through industrial mathematics became apparent to perceptive observers within Reich leadership by late 1943. American aircraft production had achieved sustainable rates that guaranteed Allied air superiority regardless of German tactical innovations or strategic decisions. The war's outcome was being determined not on battlefields, but in American factories that produced aircraft faster than German forces could destroy them, creating mathematical certainties that rendered continued resistance futile against overwhelming industrial capacity that redefined the nature of modern warfare itself. The transformation of American aircraft production reached its zenith through achievements that violated every principle of industrial limitation that German engineers had considered immutable. By spring 1944, American factories were not merely outproducing German facilities, they were redefining the fundamental nature of manufacturing possibility. The Boeing plant in Seattle was completing B-17 flying fortresses at intervals that German observers initially refused to believe, even when presented with photographic evidence from neutral diplomatic sources. German technical intelligence officers studying American production reports encountered statistics that seemed to mock the physical laws of manufacturing capacity. A single American factory complex was delivering more heavy bombers monthly than the Reich's entire aircraft industry could produce across all categories combined. The North American Aviation plant in Kansas City was rolling P-51 Mustang fighters off assembly lines faster than German factories could manufacture training aircraft using simplified designs and reduced quality standards. The mathematical impossibility of competing against American industrial output became apparent through production comparisons that revealed the scope of German miscalculation. While Reich factories struggled to maintain monthly deliveries measured in dozens of aircraft per facility, American plants were achieving daily production rates that exceeded German weekly totals. The Consolidate Diego was producing BD aircraft facility in SAN-24 bombers at speeds that German engineers calculated would require impossible worker productivity and manufacturing efficiency. Intelligence reports reaching Berlin described American production techniques that challenged fundamental assumptions about industrial organization. Factories operated continuously through shift rotations that maintained 24-hour production schedules without compromising quality standards. German manufacturing, constrained by skilled labor shortages and resource limitations, could never sustain such operational intensity even during emergency periods. American workers demonstrated productivity levels that German industrial experts attributed to statistical manipulation rather than actual achievement. The quality consistency of American mass production proved as remarkable as its quantity achievements. German pilots capturing American aircraft discovered manufacturing precision that exceeded individually crafted Reich planes despite obvious mass production assembly. Components displayed tolerances and finish quality that German artisans required weeks to achieve, yet bore clear evidence of rapid assembly by workers with minimal specialized training. This contradiction between speed and quality defied German understanding of manufacturing trade-offs. American industrial flexibility demonstrated capabilities that German centralized planning systems could never replicate. Automotive facilities converted to aircraft production were simultaneously manufacturing multiple aircraft types while maintaining civilian vehicle output for essential transportation needs. General Motors divisions produced engines for competing aircraft manufacturers while developing improved designs through collaborative engineering programs that German corporate rivalry prevented. This voluntary cooperation achieved production efficiency that state-controlled German industries couldn't match despite coercive coordination. The scope of American industrial mobilization extended beyond aircraft manufacturing to encompass systematic transformation of the nation's entire production capacity. Steel mills expanded to supply aircraft aluminum requirements while maintaining construction and shipbuilding demands. Chemical companies developed new materials and processes specifically for aviation applications while supplying traditional industrial customers. The integrated nature of American industrial response created synergistic effects that multiplied individual facility capabilities through national coordination. German economic planners studying American production statistics encountered resource allocation patterns that contradicted established industrial theory. American factories consumed raw materials at rates that should have created critical shortages, yet production continued expanding while maintaining quality standards. The Reich's careful resource conservation and allocation systems were proving inferior to American abundance approaches that treated materials as renewable commodities rather than precious reserves requiring careful management. Training systems supporting American aircraft production achieved worker development rates that German apprenticeship programs couldn't approach. Specialized schools graduated skilled aircraft assemblers within weeks, using intensive instruction methods that compressed years of traditional learning into focused programs. These accelerated training approaches produced workers whose capabilities matched traditional craftsmen in specific applications, while requiring fraction of the development time that German skill systems demanded. The technological innovation embedded within American mass production revealed research and development capabilities that German scientific establishments couldn't match. American aircraft incorporated continuous design improvements that reflected ongoing engineering refinement throughout production runs. German aircraft development, constrained by resource limitations and production disruptions, struggled to implement technological advances that American manufacturers integrated routinely into assembly line operations without interrupting delivery schedules. Corporate research laboratories supporting American aircraft manufacturers demonstrated innovation capacity that exceeded German government research institutes despite operating within competitive market systems. Private companies invested resources in fundamental research that produced breakthrough technologies while maintaining profitable production operations. This combination of scientific advancement and manufacturing efficiency created technological superiority that German state-controlled research couldn't replicate despite dedicated resource allocation. The strategic implications of American production supremacy became undeniable through combat statistics that showed aircraft replacement rates exceeding loss rates by margins that rendered attrition warfare mathematically impossible. German forces faced enemies whose aircraft strength increased monthly despite intensive combat operations that inflicted maximum possible losses. Every successful German air attack was negated within days by replacement aircraft that arrived with improved capabilities and enhanced performance characteristics. Allied air operations supported by American production demonstrated tactical flexibility that German resource constraints prevented. Combat units could afford aggressive tactics that accepted higher loss rates because replacement aircraft arrived faster than combat attrition could diminish squadron strength. American pilots flew with confidence that aircraft losses represented temporary inconveniences rather than irreplaceable strategic assets, enabling combat approaches that German pilots couldn't afford despite superior individual training and experience. The psychological impact on German aviation leadership became evident through increasingly desperate attempts to counter American numerical superiority through technological innovation. Reich researchers pursued advanced aircraft designs with priority that diverted resources from practical production improvements. Jet aircraft development received urgent attention as German engineers sought breakthrough performance advantages that might neutralize American mass production superiority through individual aircraft excellence. German aircraft manufacturers, despite heroic efforts to increase production through facility expansion and workforce mobilization, found themselves competing against industrial capacity that operated according to fundamentally different principles. Reich factories emphasized craftsmanship, excellence, and individual aircraft quality that required months of careful construction, using skilled artisans whose training demanded years of development. American plants achieved adequate quality through systematic process control that enabled rapid assembly by workers with minimal specialized preparation. The inevitable conclusion facing German strategic planners by mid-1944 was mathematical certainty of defeat through industrial capacity disparities that no tactical brilliance could overcome. American aircraft production had achieved sustainable rates that guaranteed overwhelming numerical superiority, regardless of German innovations or strategic decisions. The war's outcome was being determined by production statistics that rendered battlefield performance secondary to manufacturing capacity that could replace losses faster than enemy action could inflict them. Quality improvements within American mass production systems demonstrated continuous advancement that challenged German assumptions about manufacturing limitations. Later production aircraft exhibited performance characteristics that exceeded earlier models despite faster assembly times and reduced unit costs. American engineers incorporated combat experience and technological developments into production lines with implementation speeds that German development cycles couldn't match, creating aircraft that evolved continuously while maintaining mass production efficiency. The global reach of American aircraft supply through Allied support programs multiplied strategic impact beyond direct military requirements. British, Soviet, and other Allied air forces received American aircraft in quantities that exceeded their domestic production capacities, while American forces maintained equipment superiority across multiple theaters simultaneously. German strategic planning faced impossible resource allocation decisions against enemies whose aircraft strength represented American industrial capacity rather than individual national limitations. Intelligence assessments reaching German leadership throughout 1944 painted increasingly desperate pictures of American industrial dominance that rendered traditional military calculations meaningless. Production reports documented aircraft delivery rates that exceeded German estimates by factors that seemed to represent statistical errors rather than actual achievements. Yet photographic evidence and combat encounters confirmed American capabilities that defied German understanding of manufacturing possibility, creating strategic hopelessness that pervaded Reich military planning as the mathematical inevitability of defeat through overwhelming American industrial supremacy became undeniable to all but the most fanatically optimistic German leaders, who refused to accept reality that American factories had fundamentally altered the nature of modern warfare itself. The final German acknowledgment of American production supremacy came through captured documents that revealed the complete collapse of Reich strategic planning by autumn 1944. Internal Wehrmacht memoranda documented aircraft strength comparisons that showed American monthly production exceeding German annual capacity across every category simultaneously. Luftwaffe intelligence officers were reporting enemy aircraft numbers that their own leadership initially classified as deliberate misinformation, designed to undermine German morale through impossible statistics. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel's private correspondence, discovered after Germany's surrender, contained assessments of American industrial capacity that contradicted every public statement about eventual German victory. His letters described aircraft encounters that defied mathematical possibility based on pre-war intelligence estimates of American manufacturing limitations. German pilots were engaging enemy formations that should have been impossible to maintain, given calculated loss rates and estimated replacement capabilities. The psychological transformation within German aviation circles became complete through combat reports that documented American tactical approaches impossible under resource-constrained conditions. Allied pilots flew with aggressive abandon that accepted loss rates German commanders couldn't afford, despite superior aircraft performance and pilot training. American squadron commanders launched operations that treated aircraft as expendable resources rather than irreplaceable strategic assets, enabling tactical flexibility that German forces envied but couldn't replicate. German aircraft designers studying captured American planes discovered manufacturing innovations that challenged centuries of craftsmanship tradition. Mass-produced components displayed precision and reliability that exceeded hand-finished German equivalents despite obvious assembly line construction methods. Standardization had achieved quality levels through systematic process control that individual artisanship couldn't match, revealing industrial philosophy that German engineers struggled to comprehend even when examining physical evidence. The scope of American achievement became undeniable through production statistics that German leadership could no longer dismiss as propaganda fabrication. Intelligence services confirmed aircraft delivery rates that rendered traditional attrition warfare mathematically impossible against enemies whose replacement capacity exceeded destruction rates by margins that guaranteed inevitable defeat. The Reich faced industrial opposition that operated according to principles of abundance rather than scarcity, creating strategic impossibilities that no amount of tactical brilliance could overcome. By war's end, German aviation authorities possessed comprehensive documentation of American production capabilities that revealed the magnitude of their initial miscalculation. The cottage industry they had dismissed in 1941 had become the world's dominant aircraft manufacturer, producing more military planes than all other nations combined, while simultaneously supplying Allied forces across global theaters of operation. The mathematical reality of American industrial supremacy had rendered German strategic planning obsolete through sheer overwhelming production capacity that redefined modern warfare itself. The story of German disbelief at American aircraft production ultimately reveals the power of industrial transformation over military tradition. Hermann Göring's confident dismissal of American capabilities in December 1941 stands as one of history's most catastrophic intelligence failures. The Reich's leadership, blinded by assumptions about craftsmanship superiority and manufacturing limitations, never comprehended that their enemies possessed industrial philosophy fundamentally different from their own. American factories achieved what German experts considered impossible because they refused to accept traditional constraints. Where the Reich emphasized individual excellence, America pursued systematic abundance. The cottage industry that Göring mocked became the arsenal that buried his Luftwaffe under an avalanche of steel and aluminum. By 1945, American production statistics told the complete story. Over 300,000 military aircraft delivered, more than Germany and Japan combined produced throughout the entire war. The transformation from 3,000 planes annually to one bomber every 63 minutes represents more than manufacturing achievement. It demonstrates that perceived limitations often reflect conceptual constraints rather than physical impossibilities. The housewives and farmers who assembled B-24s at Willow Run proved that extraordinary results require not superior bloodlines, but superior organization and unwavering determination. German engineers studying captured American aircraft discovered their fundamental error. They had built individual masterpieces while America created systems of excellence. The mathematics of modern warfare belonged to the side that could replace losses faster than enemies could inflict them, rendering individual superiority meaningless against overwhelming abundance.